People always say hospitals are haunted. I used to laugh at that. I don't anymore. I worked security for an old county hospital that had partially shut down a few years before. Budget cuts forced them to move most of the departments into a newer building across town. Only the ER and a few offices on the first and second floors remained active. Everything above the third floor was sealed off, abandoned. My job was mostly routine: monitor the cameras, do hourly rounds, check doors. Nothing ever happened. Until that one night. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I was supposed to have the night off, but someone called in sick. I took the extra shift. Easy money, I thought. It started like every other: quiet halls, cold coffee, the hum of the security monitors. Around 2:30 a.m., the motion detector on the 5th floor tripped. Now the 5th floor had been closed for years. No patients. No power. No staff. The elevators didn't even go up that high anymore without a key. I figured it was a false alarm, rats, maybe, or a fault in the system. Still, protocol's protocol. I took the stairs. As soon as I reached the 4th floor, I noticed something strange. The air was colder. Not just chilly. Freezing. I could see my breath. The stairwell light flickered when I opened the door to 5. That's when the smell hit me. Antiseptic, mold, and something else. Something metallic. Blood. The hallway was pitch black, but my flashlight still worked. I swept it across the corridor. The paint was peeling, old gurneys were stacked against the walls like skeletons, and the ceiling tiles sagged with water damage. I started walking toward the motion sensor, which was placed near the old nurse's station. That's when I heard it, a gurney rolling, slowly, echoing in the dark. I stopped. My radio crackled with static, though no one spoke. Then I heard footsteps, bare feet slapping wet linoleum, fast, coming up behind me. I turned around. Nothing. My light flickered. And that's when I saw her. A woman in a hospital gown, soaking wet, her hair hanging over her face. Her feet were black with grime. She stood at the end of the hall, unmoving, staring. I called out, "Ma'am, are you okay? You're not supposed to be here." She didn't respond. Just tilted her head. I took a step toward her. She took one back. And then the lights above her burst, one by one, like a trail of fireworks coming toward me. I ran. I don't remember screaming, but I know I did. When I got to the stairs and slammed the door behind me, the sound stopped. Everything was quiet again. I made it back to the security office, shaking, sweating. My shift partner, who just arrived for the morning handover, took one look at me and said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I checked the motion logs later. Nothing was recorded. The camera feed? Corrupted. Just static. I put in my resignation that day. People still ask me why I quit. I just tell them the truth. There's something still living on the 5th floor. And it knows my name. I didn't go home that morning. I couldn't. I sat in the security office until the sun came up, staring at the bank of monitors that showed nothing but silent, gray corridors. The flicker of fluorescent lights felt like a strobe in my brain. Every few minutes, I rewound the feed, scanning the 5th floor camera again, hoping no, dreading that I'd see her. But the feed stayed corrupted, nothing but static and an occasional frame skip. The timestamp froze at 2:31 a.m. After that, blackness. There was no record of my keycard accessing the 5th floor. No radio logs, no sensor data. As far as the system was concerned, I had never gone up there. But I had. My legs still ached from running. My flashlight, the one I dropped near the stairwell, was never recovered. Around 7:15 a.m., a janitor named Ruben came in carrying his mop bucket. He was in his 60s, short and quiet, the kind of man who never asked questions but noticed everything. He gave me a long look, nodded toward my shaking hands. "You went up, didn't you?" I didn't answer. He moved slowly to the coat rack, hung up his jacket, then stood in the doorway of the office, not quite stepping in. Like there was something about that room, or maybe me, that made him hesitate. "I did too once," he said. "Back in 2019. They told us not to clean up there. Said it was closed for asbestos. But one of the young nurses dropped her wedding ring in the service elevator. Thought maybe it got stuck between floors. I went up to check." He paused, rubbed the side of his neck. Found the elevator open on 5. No power, but the doors were open. Inside, the walls were covered in handprints. Small ones. Like children. And it was warm. Not hot. Just humid. Like something was breathing in there. I finally looked at him. "Did you see anyone?" He stared at me for a long time. "I heard someone humming." That was all he said before wheeling his mop bucket toward the east wing. I should have walked out right then, but I didn't. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I didn't want to let fear decide who I was. I told myself I'd finish the week. Just a few more night shifts. No more stairs. No more wandering. Stay by the monitors, check the doors, keep your head down. But the hospital had other plans. The second night started quiet. The hum of the vending machine, the buzz of a faulty light outside the office, the usual sounds you learn to ignore. I tried to distract myself, old crime podcasts, a book I wasn't really reading, a sandwich I barely tasted. But around 3 a.m., the temperature dropped again. Not just in the office. Everywhere. My radio picked up a soft frequency. A kind of static whisper. I thought it was feedback until I realized it was repeating something. Said my name. Not clearly. Muffled, like it was being spoken through water. But it was there. Over and over. Tom, come back up. I checked the monitors. Every floor was clear. Except the fifth. The camera that had been static the night before was now on, but it showed nothing. Just the empty hallway leading to the nurse's station. Plain. Bright. Too bright. There was power on that floor. But no one had turned it on. I leaned in. At the far end of the hall, a door opened. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just slow. Like someone pushing it gently with their fingers. It swung outward, revealing nothing but darkness beyond it. I watched for a full 5 minutes. No one came out. Nothing moved. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was looking through the camera at me. Not in the way you feel when you're being watched, but in the way prey feels when the brush in the woods rustles just once before it pounces. I didn't go up that night. But I left the monitors running. I set up my phone to record the screen. And I locked the office door. Around 4:12 a.m., the power flickered in the building. Just for a second. Lights dimmed, monitors buzzed. When everything came back on, the camera feed from 5 had changed again. The hallway was still lit, but now she was standing there. Right in front of the lens. Not moving. Just breathing. I could see her chest rise and fall slowly, like something on a loop. Her eyes were open wide. Blood vessels spiderwebbed across them. Her mouth hung open in a silent scream. And her hospital gown was dripping. Not water this time. Red. The feed cut out. When I checked the footage the next morning, my phone had only recorded up to 4:11 a.m. After that, the file corrupted. Everything I saw from that point on existed only in my head. At least that's what I told myself. Until I got home and found the wet footprints in my hallway. I stared at the footprints for a long time. There were 5 of them. Bare feet. Small, thin, almost childlike. They trailed in from my apartment door, turned slightly at the hallway corner, and stopped just short of my bedroom. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The air inside my apartment was still too still. No humming refrigerator. No pipes creaking. Even the ticking of the wall clock had stopped, like time itself had been told to hush. I looked behind me. The door was shut, deadbolt. My boots were still damp from the night shift, but I hadn't stepped past the rug. The wet prints, those weren't mine. I followed them slowly. Each one was precise, distinct. The arch, the toe curve. Too detailed for something casual. They looked placed. Intentional. The way a child presses their hand into wet cement. I stood in the hallway facing my bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. My hand hesitated near the knob. I wasn't thinking clearly. I should have called someone. The police maybe. A friend. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't find anything. No one ever does. Whatever this was, it didn't care about locks or alarms. I nudged the door open. Moonlight spilled across my unmade bed. The window was cracked open, the thin curtain rustling in the breeze. Everything looked untouched until I saw the pillow. It was damp. A small circle of moisture darkened the center, and next to it, a long black hair. What? Matted? Definitely not mine. I slept on the couch that night, or pretended to. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. Every time I blinked, I saw her. That pale face, slack mouth, the slow rhythmic breathing from the hallway monitor. By the time I showed up for my next shift, my eyes were ringed with red. I hadn't shaved. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 24 hours. My partner, Jorge, looked me over and didn't say a word. He just slid his coffee across the desk toward me and turned back to his crossword. I was grateful for the silence. That night, I didn't even pretend to do my rounds. I stayed glued to the monitors, every camera window burned into my brain. Hours crawled by. Midnight. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. Nothing. At 2:57 a.m., something changed. It was a sound at first. Not over the radio this time. Not in my head. A real, physical sound, metal scraping tile. Something being dragged. I muted the monitors and listened. It was faint. Distant. Coming from the west wing. The old surgery corridor. The one that used to connect directly to the 5th floor service elevator before it was sealed. I checked the cameras. That section hadn't shown anything for months. But now the feed was active. Just grainy black and white footage flickering in and out. The surgery hallway was empty except for a bed. An old gurney, rolling slowly across the screen. No one was pushing it. It turned at the end of the hall, bumped into the wall, then stopped. For a moment nothing moved. Then the gurney jolted violently as if something had thrown its weight onto it. The metal squealed. The wheels shifted. And then, something sat up. Not all at once. First the shape of a head. Then shoulders. Long wet hair fell forward. The shape twitched, twisted, as if it wasn't sure how a body was supposed to move. I stood up, backing away from the desk, my chair scraping the floor behind me. On the monitor, the figure turned its head slowly, mechanically, and looked into the camera. And the feed went black. The silence after was unbearable. I stood there, frozen, staring at nothing. Then my office phone rang. It almost stopped my heart. No one calls the security office at night. Ever. I picked up with a shaking hand. Security. Pause. Then a soft, static voice. The bed is for you. The line went dead. I don't remember how long I stood there holding the phone. Might have been 5 minutes. Might have been an hour. My body went cold, fingers numb. There was no moisture on the receiver. No odd smell. Just that voice echoing in my skull. I checked the monitors again. This time all the 5th floor cameras were active. They showed rooms that shouldn't have been lit: patient bays, charting stations, storage closets. Everything looked new, clean, as if time had reversed. But the halls were empty. Still. Waiting. Then a light blinked on at the nurse's station. Something stood behind the glass, facing away. A woman. Her hospital gown clung to her frame. She slowly raised her arm and pressed her palm to the glass. The camera zoomed in slightly, though I never touched the controls. And there on the inside of the glass was a handprint, smeared in blood. Then another. And another. And then the figure turned around. But the feed cut before I could see her face. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like this story. I didn't leave the office the rest of the night. I didn't move, barely breathed. Just sat in that chair, every muscle in my body locked tight, eyes fixed on the monitor that had gone dark. The rest of the cameras were online. 5th floor still. Lit like daylight. But no one moved. The nurse's station was empty again. The hallway gurney was gone. At exactly 4:33 a.m., the hallway camera at the main entrance, the one by the vending machine, flickered. A figure walked past. Just a blur. Well, what? No sound. But when I checked the front doors, they were still locked. No alarms. No motion triggers. Nothing. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was pressurized. Like standing 10 feet underwater, every second a little heavier, my own heartbeat sounding wrong in my ears. I could hear my own breathing, but it didn't feel like it was coming from me. I wanted to go home. But I knew if I stepped outside that night, something would follow me. It already had once. It had found me in my apartment. It had left wet footprints near my bed. If I turned my back now, it would find a way into more than my hallway. More than my dreams. By morning, the lights in the 5th floor shut off all at once. Not gradually. Not like a system reset. Just gone. A flicker, then complete darkness. When Jorge arrived to relieve me at 6:57 a.m., I barely looked up. He poured himself coffee, glanced at the monitors. "Nothing again?" he said, oblivious. I didn't answer. He sat, pulled his phone out, started his crossword. I sat beside him in total silence, the hum of the monitors behind us. And then, a soft knock at the window. We both turned. Nothing. But the condensation was there, clear as day. A perfect handprint. Small. Narrow. Pressed into the glass from the inside. Jorge didn't say anything. He stood slowly, staring at it. His face had gone pale. Then he looked at me. "You should take the day off, man." I nodded. But I didn't go home. I drove. Aimless. Loops around the city. Past gas stations, empty parking lots, shuttered diners. I couldn't hear the radio. I couldn't think. I felt like I was underwater again, stuck in a heavy, humid stillness that clung to my skin. That evening, around 7 p.m., I parked in the hospital's west lot and just sat in my car. The building loomed in the dusk, the windows like dead eyes watching. I noticed something strange, a light in the 5th floor, right corner, where the old maternity ward used to be. That section didn't have working power. I knew it for a fact. But someone was in there. Standing in the window. So, I waited. And after a few minutes, the figure in the window raised a hand. And waved. I told myself I'd quit. I even wrote the email. Had it drafted on my phone, thumb hovering over send. But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe something worse. Maybe she'd pull me back in either way. The final shift came 2 days later. They had trouble covering night security. The hospital was underfunded, understaffed, and too proud to close down. No one wanted that job. And they knew I wouldn't say no. That night I didn't bring coffee. I didn't bring food. I brought a flashlight. My father's old police flashlight, heavy, solid, a real piece of iron. It weighed down my hand like a weapon. A charm against whatever waited upstairs. The first 2 hours passed with nothing but silence. Then, just after 1 a.m., every single elevator button lit up at once. A mechanical ding echoed through the empty halls. The elevator by the west wing was descending. On the monitor, I watched as it passed floor 4, then 3, then 2. But when the doors opened on the first floor, there was no one inside. And yet wet footprints appeared on the tile outside the elevator. One by one, walking calmly toward the stairwell. The camera at the 5th floor landing kicked on. Black and white footage. The stairwell door opened before the prints arrived. As if something was waiting. I grabbed my flashlight and the building master key. My hands were trembling again. I didn't want to go up. Every instinct told me to lock the office and wait for morning. But this thing, it didn't want to be ignored anymore. It had touched my world. Left signs in my home. Whispered my name. I had to see it. Or at least understand it. The stairwell was cold. My boots echoed on the concrete steps, each one heavier than the last. The bulb overhead buzzed, casting sickly yellow light that didn't quite reach the corners. By the time I reached the 4th floor, I could feel it moisture in the air. Thick and clammy. I started to sweat. 5th floor. The door stood slightly open. A slow, rhythmic drip echoed from the hallway beyond. I pushed it open. The lights were on. Not flickering. Not failing. Bright. Clean. Sterile. Like the hospital had never aged. But it was silent. I stepped forward. Down the hallway, I saw gurneys parked neatly along the wall. A nurse's cart. A wheelchair facing the wrong direction. And then I saw the room. At the end of the hallway, one door stood open. Room 533. I didn't know why, but the number pressed into my brain like a bruise. It called me. Inside, the fluorescent lights glared overhead. The bed was made, crisp white sheets. The monitor above it blinked. Patient, unidentified. Status expired. Time, 2:31. A chair sat in the corner facing the bed. Empty. But the cushion was wet. The air was so heavy it felt like syrup in my lungs. And that's when I heard it. That humming. Soft. Off-key. Childlike. It was coming from behind the curtain. The one drawn around the bed. I stepped closer. The humming stopped. Pause. And then. The curtain moved. Not from wind. Not from me. From something standing up behind it. My mouth had gone dry. I could hear my own heart pounding hard against my ribs. That pale curtain, light blue with tiny faded cartoon ducks, swayed just slightly, as if someone behind it was shifting their weight from foot to foot. Then the humming began again. This time it was louder. But still wrong. Offbeat. The tune stopped and started, the notes repeating like someone was trying to remember how it went but couldn't quite get it right. There was a breath to it too. As if the sound came through teeth. I should have turned around. I should have walked away and never looked back. But I didn't. I reached out. My hand trembled as I gripped the edge of the curtain. The fabric was cold. Damp. Like it had been hanging in a basement for years. And then I pulled it back. At first I thought the bed was empty. The sheets were smooth, tucked tight under the mattress. The pillow fluffed. But there was something wrong with the air. The light above the bed buzzed louder, like it was trying to scream. Then I saw her. She wasn't on the bed. She was underneath it. Pressed flat to the tile floor, her cheek squashed against it. Limbs long and twisted like wet rope. Her white gown was soaked, clinging to her frame like seaweed on stone. Her hair spread around her like oil on water, black and stringy, slick with something too dark to be water. And her eyes, God, her eyes were open. Wide. Focused. Staring directly at me. I staggered back. Hit the crash cart with my hip. A tray toppled over, clattering loudly, echoing down the hall. She didn't move. Not at first. Then, with a sound like bones grinding under pressure, she began to slide forward. Not crawl, slide. Her arms didn't reach. Her legs didn't push. Her body dragged itself like a sheet of skin across the tile. I ran. Back through the hallway, past the wheelchairs, the empty stations, the flickering fluorescents now buzzing like insects. I hit the stairwell door and slammed it behind me. Took the steps 3 at a time. My boots thudded down, heavy and echoing in the metal shaft. But I wasn't alone. Each floor I passed, I heard her. The wet slapping of bare feet on metal steps. Not fast. Not urgent. But steady. Following. I reached the security office, fumbled with my keys, slammed the door behind me and twisted the lock. The monitors were all white noise. Every feed blown out. Just static and faint shapes flickering almost like someone pacing. I sat there until sunrise. The moment the first daylight broke through the eastern windows, everything stopped. The monitors went dark. The air returned to normal. The pressure lifted. But something stayed. I never went back. Didn't collect my last check. Didn't return my badge. I left the city 2 days later, packed everything into my car and drove until the skyline disappeared in my rearview. But the story didn't end there. I started getting calls at night. Blocked number. Always the same. I let it go to voicemail once. There was no voice. Just the sound of dripping water. Then a faint hum. Like a lullaby with the notes in the wrong order. Then breathing. Wet, close, uneven. And then a whisper. Not a name. Not a word. Just the sound of someone waiting. I moved again. Changed numbers. Got a new phone. Didn't matter. The next night, I woke to the sound of someone pacing in my hallway. And on the wall, outside my bedroom door, 5 wet handprints. True horror isn't blood or death. It's knowing that something found you once. And now it knows where you live. And how you sleep. And how to wait. Because it always waits. It waits behind curtains. Under beds. Inside stairwells and empty wings of places that should have been torn down. And when you least expect it, it returns. Smiling. Dripping. Humming your name. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like this story.